let's move right into our next panel, our CEO panel. I'm excited about this as much for the moderator as for the great CEO speakers that we have today. Our moderator today is Karen Walker, longtime editor of Air Transport World and now Group Air Transport Editor-in-Chief for Aviation Week. Karen has spent decades covering every issue in aviation. She's been an aviation journalist for 35 years and has won the Royal Aeronautical Society's Aerospace Journalist of the Year multiple times. It was named 2021 Aerospace Media Awards Aerospace Writer of the Year. Thank you for joining us, Karen. Joining Karen are Tim Combrick, who's President and CEO of Empire Airlines, a regional cargo airline. Tim's been in aviation since 1971 and has logged over 13,000 hours as an airline pilot, check airman, and instructor. Empire has become the largest regional operator for FedEx, and Tim's been a steady voice on RAA's executive committee. Brian Bedford has been CEO of Republic Airways for 24 years. He's grown the airline from 36 turboprops to a 200-plus jet fleet. Brian has served as our board chairman at RAA twice and plays an outsized role in our advocacy efforts. Dean Flannery is CEO of PSA Airlines, which is an American Airlines wholly owned subsidiary. Dean is also, as we've recognized, our outgoing chair. PSA serves nearly 100 destinations with nearly 800 daily flights. Rick Leach is CEO of GoJet, which he founded in 2005. Rick is a 40-year aviation veteran who built an airline from flying 12 19-seat turboprops to a fleet with 171 regional jets. His resume is extensive, and we welcome his experience. And Linda Markham, CEO of Cape Air. Linda joined Cape Air in 2002 and held several roles before being named CEO starting January 1st, 2022. Nothing happening when you came on board, right? She was chairwoman of Women in Aviation International and was the first woman on the RAA's board of directors and was the chair of our board starting in 2014, I think. So we are glad to welcome our panelists, and Karen, it's your panel.
Thank you so much, Faye. Lovely to see you. Thank you very much. And good morning, everyone. Lovely to see everybody here. Well, it's sadly a grey day in DC, but oh, was there a bit of feedback there? Are we good? Okay. Well, I am absolutely honoured and delighted to moderate this panel. I mean, wow, what a lineup here! Fantastic, and such a great amount of expertise here. We've just heard the top line, so I'm going to try and get straight into some of the hearing directly from this expert panel, and get into the discussion. There's no shortage of topics in this industry, okay? And I'd just like to start very quickly with each of you, if I may, just go down the line. If you could, each of you, just give me a top line of, what's most on your mind. If you could sum that up for me. Brian, let's start with you at Republic. What's happening there that's most catching your attention?
I think the thing that we're focused on most right now is just labor shortages in general. And it's not, of course, we hear a lot about pilots and technicians, and rightfully so, but it's beyond that. When we think about air traffic control, Republic Airlines is the largest airline operating out of New York metro area. And so we're sort of on the front lines of the difficulties that air traffic control is having. And so that is, certainly from a customer perspective, that is felt more acutely day by day by day as the constant lack of capacity. Starting out on a clear day and having ATC tell you, I'm sorry, we need to go into a flow control program because we aren't properly staffed. So, the other issues, as challenges as they are, we don't build schedules for the pilots we may hire. We build schedules for the pilots we have on the property. And, every hour is precious. And when you can't fly those hours because our partners in government aren't keeping their end of the bargain, it's very frustrating.
Absolutely. So, Rick, GoJet for United Airlines?
Yeah, it's going to be a sort of a repeat story here probably as you go down the line. It is definitely a focus on labor, pilots, technicians, but as Brian said, all other areas that support our industry is being challenged and has been challenged since COVID. And our focus is trying to get quality labor, get them quality trained, and get them into the operation as quickly as possible, which is tough to find those candidates, especially with the captain shortage that exists today. And there's a great deal of opportunity before us. I think a lot of us have either aircraft to put back in the air or new organic growth aircraft to put into the air. And the demand is there, and the key is getting the resources to do that. So there's a lot of focus around that, doing it as quality, as safely as possible.
And Dia, obviously PSA going for operating for American Airlines. Similar story there of focus areas?
Absolutely. I'll say what Rick has said. It's probably going to sound like a refrain here, but our focus is trying to come to peace with running a business model that says, give us your last available flight hour at every moment, right? And get it right 6 months ahead of time, and don't overpromise and underdeliver. Certainty and having clarity of a plan is probably the most valuable thing for an organization, so that everybody knows what we're aiming for. So the challenges really are not only to recruit and to train and equip people to fly, it's to do it at the maximum of your potential and make certain all of your organization is equipped to do it as well. And every day that number changes, whether it's supply chain from a labor perspective, from a fleet perspective, from an external resource perspective, there's all sorts of challenges. And so getting it right is almost impossible, and keeping the team connected along the way is a big challenge.
Linda, first of all, congratulations. The only president and CEO woman in the airline industry here in the United States, I believe. Congratulations on that. And Cape Air, a very interesting airline. I always say it's this big airline that nobody's heard of, certainly outside of America. But you have a lot going on there. What's happening out in Nantucket?
Yeah, big airline that flies little planes.
Yep.
Our real, challenge right now is we hire a lot of pilots. Our real challenge is the, retention piece of that. Our model is a little bit different because we can hire first officers at 500 hours and train them until they reach the minimum requirements to get an ATP. The real challenge that we have is keeping them after they reach those ATP minimums. Certainly, the other challenge we have is technicians. As everybody has said, labor has been a challenge across the board for us. And then we are in the process of integrating a new fleet type into our organization, which also poses some challenges for training, making sure that people either are dual qualified or trained in the right equipment for basing. So, it's been quite the challenge. And like I said, retention is our biggest focus right now and how we retain the pilots.
And Tim, Empire, FedEx's regional operator.
Sure.
Are the same issues going on from the cargo side?
Absolutely. The good thing about going last with this panel is all I have to say is ditto. I mean, seriously, it's all the way through commercial aviation. I'm like Linda. I've got a 135 operation, but I got a 121 operation also, and those challenges are identical. The lack of we got two issues. We hire first officers, but we don't accrue flight time at the same rate you do if you're flying at a regional. My pilots maybe get, on a good year, get 500 hours a year. So it takes a long time to develop a first officer, get the experience to get them into the left seat of a 121 airplane. So that's a problem. So we're perpetually looking for what we call street captains, and the same thing this group is looking for. And so it's an identical commodity. The focus on retention is huge. We find we have people that want to be they want our kind of lifestyle. They're not on the road all the time. They get to be home most nights. And what we have to do is make a work environment for them that we meet that commitment to them. And when you're short on pilots, you work them more than they may expect to. You pay them for it, but their quality of life degrades during that time. So it's a two-edged sword. I will say that, knock on wood, if I had some, it's encouraging. In the last few months, we have seen a fairly decent improvement in our ability to recruit the type of people that we need. I know that our attrition rate will still remain high because the attractiveness for young people to move through the ranks, move into the regionals, move into the majors is a pretty big deal. But we continue to fight the fight. The mechanic side is huge. We have an MRO also. We do cargo modifications on large turboprops and do heavy checks and stuff. And that's another challenge in itself, is just trying to be competitive in a market where, not to pick on my neighbor Boeing, but I'll use them as an example. With the grounding of the MAXs, when they started to put them back in the air, they're paying very lucrative contract salaries, benefits, housing, per diem and all that to hire people to get the MAXs back. And it's created a void that was even bigger than the one we had before for mechanic labor, skilled technicians. So we're fighting that fight too.
So unsurprisingly, this is very much the common thread that everybody has picked on in terms of sort of a priority area. And we know this industry's been talking about this. It's not a new issue, and as we heard earlier, it's not really even an issue that came out of the pandemic. It just has got a lot worse. Let's talk about that. There's some specifics as well that people have raised about the particularly acute problem with captains, shortage of captains. But let's talk a little bit about what are the solutions that you think are the things that can most work most quickly. Let's training for a start. I mean, I know, Brian, you guys have got a new campus in Indiana. What are the key areas, Brian, do you think that are the part of the solutions here?
Well, I think we're sort of at the bottom of the food chain. There's always been a natural progression, a career progression. Young people come into the industry with no experience. They come in with sort of their minimal ratings and mandatory hours of time building, but they have no commercial experience. So our training programs are designed to take that raw material and to mold them and to develop their leadership capabilities and their command competencies. And that happens over the course of their time with us flying in the right seat. The expectation then, of course, has always been that those individuals will then migrate into the left seat. So I don't think it's an issue of training or training capacity. The system has been designed to progress young people through that career development. What has changed over the last 18 months is that the hiring qualifications from the larger carriers have changed. It used to be a minimum of a 4-year bachelor's degree. It used to be a minimum of 2,000 hours of command PIC experience before they were even qualified to be considered for employment at a major. And those qualifications have now been removed almost in their entirety. So essentially, once we onboard somebody and we develop and train them and demonstrate that they have the competencies to fly as a first officer, they're now employable at the larger airlines. And so we're not able to retain that experience. So it's a challenge. Our focus has been we would rather be shorthanded first officers than have too many first officers that won't stay with us. So we've implemented pre-employment agreements that obligate the future Republic pilot to stay with us through 2 years of PIC experience. So we've got 250 pilots that have signed those agreements. We've got 75 pilots a month that are now coming in under those working agreements. And we'll see. We'll see if a year from now we'll move those folks from the right seat into the left seat, and we can say problem solved. We won't know till we get there.
Rick, what's your perspective on what are the most pragmatic solutions, if I put it that way?
Well, our industry still isn't running at let's say full capacity or its full efficiency of production. And we're not producing the hours that we need, that when we're bringing people into the pipeline or bringing people into the first officer seat, we're not being able to get them the hours quick enough like we used to. There's still hundreds of aircraft sitting on the ground that used to be there producing those hours, organically creating the talent that we needed to move up and progress into pilot in command positions. And as captains have moved on, it's been harder to get those times. And as salaries have increased, we had a large group of first officers that said, hey, you know, I like being the senior guy and gal. I like my salary, living where I live, and I don't want to move. I don't want to upgrade to captain.
Yeah.
And so you had these folks that were taking up their hours, and there was all these people that wanted to move and progress, but they couldn't get the hours they need. And we had an imbalance, as Brian alluded to, between first officers and captains. Some of us twice as many first officers or even more. So we've taken, a lot of us, the last 8 months to a year to get that back in balance. And I think that's good. And we've seen through the changes that we've made, our turnover in our captain ranks compared to what it was a little over a year ago or more come quite a bit down, but it's still turnover. But getting those captains created as quickly as we need to, trying to incentivize the first officers, which we're doing a lot of things to do that, trying to find the direct entry captain type candidates, which is tough, very tough to do. They're comfortable where they're at, and to lure them to come over to another program is always very hard. But we've got to get the machine running at its full competency, its full level of production again, so that we're generating the organic growth that we need. I don't see my position as president and CEO anymore, because I'm out there. I feel like I'm chief recruiter. I'm out traveling the country with my recruiting team, which they probably hate that I'm traveling with them. But I pay the bills.
You make them share a room.
That's true. But I'm seeing this. I'm speaking at schools all over the country, and they're chock full with candidates.
Yeah.
I just wish we had those first officer positions for them right away. You know, we need to get the captain issue. We need to get the industry healthy. There's a lot of opportunity out there, but we've got some barriers we still have to overcome, and we're working on that, trying to mitigate the folks that don't want to move up and create opportunity for the others that want to move up as quickly as possible.
Interesting. So you're now in the position of selling your aircraft, your
Yes.
airline, not just to the customer, but to to the people
Speaking
that
at all the
coming in.
conferences.
That's
Oh,
right.
that's
To
true.
the hiring.
Yeah.
Tim, would you concur with that? Does that?
Yeah. I think I think the question was, are there some near-term fixes, and there are no near-term fixes. Obviously, everybody's familiar with the legislation that's attempting to be moved here in extending retirement age to age 67. That is not a panacea. It doesn't fix everything, but we have a way of talking back in the office around headwinds and tailwinds, and it feels like for the last 3 or 4 years, it's been all headwinds for the regional business, unsustainably strong winds enough to stall your aircraft, so to speak. We feel that's changing now. We feel like that's moving into a tailwind, and things like age 67, as small as it might be, it makes sense. It does provide a small, labor contingent. We think that the changing economy and the slowing domestic economy is an opportunity for regionals to take a larger share of that very profitable mid-size and small-size community flying. And we see school enrollment higher than it's ever been, largely because of the wages and the compensation changes that have had there. So all the elements are in place to start making the turn here, but we've got to get them finalized, and some time has to pass here for them to start doing the work. To Rick's point, when you get that tailwind, it starts to fix the issue around aircraft utilization, which fixes the hours accumulation on first officers, which fixes a captain upgrade issue. And so we're ready for that fully to take effect.
My apologies, it's Dion, of course. Dion, can I just ask, just hearing what you three have just said, what's the timeline that you're now thinking in terms of? When these adjustments could be in place? Anyone?
But just our view is it's going to be evolutionary. It's going to be slowly. That said, when trends move in the industry, they usually sort of are I wouldn't say ignored, but they're viewed cautiously, and the machine moves a little bit slowly. But when it's definitive that a result is going to happen, change happens very, very quickly and in scale. And so my personal view is it's going to take us through the next year before we're going to have definitivity around demand, around these legislative issues, and around what's next. But then change will happen relatively quickly.
Does that sound right, Brian?
Well, I don't think anybody really knows, because the variable that drives turnover is demand from the majors. And we're in a process right now where new labor agreements are just now starting to take root at the majors, and there's going to be, I think, a process of discovery on like what are the productivity hits in these labor agreements that will require the majors to staff up even higher than what they're staffed for normally. And whatever that number is, let's say there's a 10% increase in demand just to sort of fly the current system due to the new labor agreements, well, then that's 10% more pilots that have to upstream from regionals to majors. And there's still, the low-cost carrier segment that have to come to grips with what their new labor costs and labor productivity penalties are going to look like as well. So I just think there's a lot of unknowns out there, and it's too early to call that there is a solution a year or 2 years into the future. I do agree that the inflow of pilots into the system has been very strong and very healthy, but the demand has been even greater. So every year we're still, just mathematically deepening the shortage. So I think we're, depending on whose numbers you want to look at, every year we're still going 2,000 to 4,000 pilots deeper in the hole. And Chip alluded to this in his conversation. That leads to a loss of service. Someone will lose service here, and the economics say that's going to be the smaller planes and the smaller communities. So again, I think it's too early to tell, but until there is a sort of a steady stream of demand, at the network carriers, the regionals will continue to suffer.
Linda, you touched on the fleet transition that you're also doing. You've got a lot of Cessnas, of course, and it's the Travelers that you're bringing in. In terms of recruitment, in terms of hiring pilots, is that is that an attractive, a different sort of option that attracts people into that career?
Well, I definitely think the Traveler is a modern aircraft, and pilots certainly like flying it. We have a partnership with Republic's Lift Academy, and right now about 90% of our first officers are through the Lift Academy. So those cadets do very, very well in training with the Traveler. Very easy with the training that they get at Lift, and then they come to Cape Air. So it's been a very easy transition for them. When we were talking about pilot numbers, and I agree, Brian, with what Chip was saying, when you look at what we do at Cape Air, because we are really building pilots, and we are one of the organizations that do that, and unfortunately, as I said, they're leaving before they fulfill a commitment to Cape Air, and we know that they want to move on, and we try to be supportive in pathway programs to help them get to the regional airlines that they wish to go to, and that's why we have the partnership with Lyft and Republic. But unfortunately, even some of those students are leaving before they actually end up fulfilling their commitment and go to Republic. So it's been a challenge, and something that we're focused on and looking at, what we can be doing differently to make sure that those folks fulfill their commitment and go on to Republic. It's a huge investment, for
it's
both
a sort
organizations.
of double-edged sword, really. You're both part of the solution, definitely, in that you're bringing in these new pilots, but then they're also being taken up into other parts of into other sectors.
And we've had great success with foreign pilots as well. And so we have a fair number of foreign pilots that are flying for us.
Interesting. So let's just transition this then a little bit to the sort of fleet side of that. And the other interesting change that is going on, I think, if you look across, is the sort of less and less and less see the turboprop out there. And let's just talk a little bit about that, and also, of course, the supply chain issues, and whether, again, what the impact is at the regional side. We all know that's an ongoing issue, but how does that percolate down to the regional? So again, Brian, you're all Embraers, all E-jets. Is that the way forward? The going over to the jets?
Well, so pre-COVID, we operated 3 different certificates. We had, Embraer 145s on a certificate. We had Bombardier Q400s on a certificate. And, what you realize is the pilot shortage continued to grow and grow and grow, is that you just couldn't be all things to all people. So specialization became very key become the most efficient E-jet operator that we could. And so we were harvesting those resources and moving them into, frankly, the product that had the best capabilities to give our customers what they wanted, which was a seamless customer experience between regional and mainline. And the E-jet does that in an unparalleled way. I mean, it's a great product. Of course, we've also seen in this country a lot of skepticism or trepidation about getting on large turboprops. I think it's a very U.S. unique issue. I don't think we don't see the same concerns in South America or Africa or Europe or Asia, but in the United States, customers, if they can get on a jet, they'll get on a jet, and they'll pay more money to get on a jet. Yeah. And the classic turboprop avoidance factor. If you're in a small community and the only thing you have is either a 5-hour bus ride, or you get on a Cape Air Cessna 402, you're going to get on a Cape Air Cessna 402. So it's certainly relevant and it fills a need here. And it'd be great if people were building new products that we could consider. No offense, Martin. We're always going to be a loyal E-jet customer. But I mean, right now, Embraer is the only game in town. So. Yeah.
And Tim, you guys you're really offering like a premium.
Rick.
Sorry, Rick. I apologize, Rick. I'm
Tim
looking
and I
at the
get
wrong person.
confused all the time.
You're really looking at the premium side of that sort of regional jet offering in many respects with
well,
the 550.
that's the outcome, obviously, and the product was a brainchild of ours to try to anticipate what we felt our partner United needed, what could really help them better compete, and also they're very committed, as all the majors are, to their premium customer, and so the 550 does that in spades, and I think it overcomes a lot of the lack of expectation that sometimes the traveler has of regional flying. It solves a lot of those issues and also creates some experiences that they didn't anticipate, that exceeds their expectations. So it's really, a great product, and we're happy, obviously, to be flying it. I do see we've got 35 more of those to put in the air. Right. And while I think there is a conversation to be had about other types, whether it's 135 applications or 121 applications, there's a lot of us have either aircraft that need to become more productive than they are today in our schedules because we have a lot more capacity we can get out there and need to get out there, and the demand is there. And so we're anxious to do that. So our focus is really on that. But I do believe there needs to be some good solutions and some good opportunities in what's being created for the downline solutions that will be needed for changes of equipment down the road. I think that some of the aircraft that are flying today have some good life left in them, but we want to make sure they're flying at full capacity, and we're really nowhere near that as an industry yet. So we need to focus on those things. But I think there's some applications, as Brian said, we were a big turboprop operator, as a lot of us were in our origin, and we flew the ATR, didn't fly the Cube, we flew the ATR, it was a great airplane. And at the time, it was a really impressive airplane as the evolution before jets came about. But then the aversion to turboprops in this country, I think, is somewhat misplaced, but it takes the same pilot, though, in the shortage environment to fly advanced turboprop as it does to fly a jet, and we're all struggling on that side. So to balance that is a key thing.
So Tim, is the turboprop still the right aircraft when it comes to cargo?
Yeah. Well, our customers don't have an aversion to riding on a turboprop. They're pretty good at it. For our model, the FedEx feeder model, they're a great airplane. And there are other restrictions that would keep us from flying something bigger, which would basically the scope clause of the FedEx pilots. But for our stage lengths and what we're doing, turboprop's a tremendous airplane. The fuel efficiency, the type of airports we operate in and out of, we basically have 3 variants right now. I mean, we fly the bread and butter Cessna 208s that we've been flying since the early 80s. And then the ATR product has been wonderful from a standpoint of the pilots enjoying flying the airplane and the job we can do out there. And now we have the new Cessna 408s, the new twin engine aircraft that is containerized or can be containerized, and we're getting new ATR 72-600s with large cargo doors. So we kind of see in the best of both worlds there, and so they really serve our mission well. The different sizes and combinations gives our customer flexibility on the particular markets. And so we'll see how that continues to evolve. I will say that the feeder network system is evolving out there. I believe not only for FedEx, but maybe for UPS and some of the other carriers, driven out of kind of post-COVID changes and looking at trying to become more efficient. There was a tendency to put what's called P2 freight or second day freight on an airplane and get it there overnight. It's great, your package got there a day early. But the truth of the matter is the customer's not really paying for that. So FedEx is becoming, I think, more sensitive to making sure they're right sizing all of the products. And I think that the role of the feeders and the turboprops are going to become even more important in the FedEx system in the future.
One of the reasons I was interested in this particular question is because when you look at the sort of on the sustainability issue, and when you look at the sort of technology side of this, and people talking about the new types of powered aircraft, and of course what they're looking at is to begin with on this side of the industry, the commuter side, the hybrid electric types of aircraft that will look to the customer like you're going back to turboprops and things. So, Dion, United is one of those carriers that's really outspoken about sustainability, and where do you think that fits?
Well, I mean, I think every carrier, major carrier, including United American, certainly as well, making strong equity investments in the future of technologies and the development of those. It's important. It's critically important, right? It's what customers place high value on, even though that technology is not here today. Doing what you can from a governance perspective and environmental perspective has a lot of relevance to folks who are willing to pay you to move them from one place to another. I think Martin said it right. I'm certainly not the aviation engineer, but following the developments, we all know that the future is going to arrive on the regional side of the business before it's deployable to larger aircraft. That is exciting. And it will be interesting to see if we can make a graceful return to, as you said, turbofan or turboprop, but electric or hydroelectric powered turbofans. I think you look at it from a car perspective. The vehicle is the same in an electric car versus an internal combustion engine, and the experience is very similar. And so that transition into future technology was very seamless. There is a stigma around loud, lower altitude flying in the elements experience associated with historical turboprop activities. But it's going to be interesting to see how much people are willing to say, but it's the right thing to do for the planet, and I'm in. And it's not a degradation, so to speak. It's an advancement. You think also about the other aspects of the experience around small community air service. 30 years ago, you were boarding a small turboprop aircraft on a tarmac in the corner of an airport, and you had to endure a lot of differences in terms of product and service offerings. Today, that's not necessarily the case. We've talked about it. Mid-size and large-size regional jets are almost indistinguishable with respect to the onboard product. The airports that we operate into and out of, and the terminal facilities look identical to whether you're going to Orlando or you're going to Dayton, Ohio. And so I think a lot of that investment in the entire travel experience is helping the adoption of regional services. It will be interesting to see as new technologies bring the turboprop back. Will we make that transition well?
Linda, would you comment at all also on sort of where you think technology is going? Because I think particularly at that small end in terms of sort of like electric aircraft, et cetera.
Yeah, I think Cape Air is probably the perfect model and size to introduce electric or hybrid aircraft. We've been having conversations with Eviation, their Alice product. They are currently remanufacturing it to make it more efficient, but we certainly have had a lot of conversations as the operator and what we need for performance out of that aircraft. Obviously, there's a lot of infrastructure that needs to be done at the airports as well to support the product. The destinations we fly, our customers are certainly very, knowledgeable about the economy. I mean, what's going on with climate and everything, and certainly that is something that is one of our pillars that we focus on is sustainability. So we're looking forward to it. I heard this morning that Joby delivered their first eVTOL to the Department of Defense, so that was exciting to see. So I think it's going to happen sooner rather than later.
And in fact, people could be excited about that the way they were
That's right.
excited about electric cars, or that sort of status sort of idea. Do you think, Brian?
Well, you raised, I think, a critical point is the Defense Department has been very integral and not necessarily picking winners and losers, but very engaged in this technology advancement. And I think a lot of that shaking out process will happen, through the military's ultimate use of the asset, and then it'll migrate its way into the regional space. But let's, Linda said there's a lot of infrastructure that has to be addressed, and we're talking billions of dollars of infrastructure investment. If we did some analysis with our friends at Eve. We're an early adopter of the Eve product. And, if you have 5 of these things parked in a vertiport, the power consumption to charge 5 of these vehicles at the same time would run a small city. I mean, so we're talking really, really challenging infrastructure issues that have to be addressed. Having said that, I think all of that pales in terms of what will the regulator require to actually operate this in commercial service, because if the regulator, aka FAA, says it's a 1,500-hour ATP, business is dead. It's stillborn. So, and we don't know. We don't know what that's going to look like. So there's a lot of hope and take it on faith that that won't be the case, but we just don't know. And because again, if it's a choice between taking an ATP-rated pilot and have them fly a 20-mile air taxi, with 4 people, or put them in the right seat of a, 76-seat jet, we know where that asset's going to be deployed.
So let's pick up on another subject that we know is on everybody's minds across the industry again, but on safety, okay? And everybody in this room knows that the safety standards of this industry, including this sector, is extremely high. But we know also some of the concerns. Let's start with the ATC issue and some of the incidents that we've been seeing. Does that raise particular concerns? Rick, let's start with you, because you are you operate in an area that's one of the ones most affected.
Well, yeah, there's always safety concerns to make sure we're having the highest qualified aviators in all these different roles, whether it's our aircraft, whether it's ATC towers, or what have you. So you want to make sure you have the highest quality folks, but there's shortages in there. And what raises the concern is, because of the fact that we're obviously going to operate a very high, safety-focused industry, where we're in, and we operate a lot in the New York area, as Brian does, not as much as he does, of course. But the ATC is a huge impact there when they have shortages and they're pulling down capacity because of those somewhat artificial limitations that we need to find a way as an industry or as a country to overcome. But what we cannot ever do is push ourselves to, whether it's staffing an aircraft or staffing an ATC tower, in haste to make sure there's no shortcut. You want to have the highest qualified folks there. So am I concerned from a safety perspective that the people that are there are not qualified? I don't have that concern, but we need a lot more of them, just like we need a lot more pilots, and we work all very hard to create the infrastructure, to create the hours. So every hour is very valuable. When we can't operate due to those other limitations, due to ATC, that's a big concern, a huge concern, because those are wasted, never to be reobtained, they've lost forever. So
it's that turnover.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Brian?
Oh God, I always get myself in trouble.
That's why I asked you.
I think first of all, zero accidents is every day, every flight. That is the goal, and I believe everybody in the industry, whether you're on labor union side, regulator side, management side, everybody shares that as a common purpose. But I think we don't know what we don't know, right? And there are new factors that have been introduced over the last 2 years in recovering from COVID, because we took a lot of senior aviators and we retired them out of the system. And those aviators were flying the largest, wide body products. And we all understand in the seniority system how it works. You ping pong back and forth, between the different fleet types. And so while, there's tremendous experience, within the industry, I do have a concern over the experience in seat, because we've had unprecedented hiring, across the industry, whether that's LCCs or network carriers. Everybody's hiring 200 pilots a month, 2,400 new pilots coming into every organization, right? People moving out. I was a first officer on a 737, now I'm a captain on a wide body, and I'm paired with somebody who's brand new. And so I'm just saying, I do think the speed of the turnover in the industry is at levels we've just never seen before. So we don't know what we don't know. But I look at some of these misses, communication glitches. Oh, thank God that didn't get recorded. I think we should at least ask those questions. We should at least, be honest enough. And thank God we have voluntary safety disclosures, and we have FOQA, and we have Flight Operations Quality Assurance, and we have SMS. These are exactly why these programs were designed to anticipate, see the trends, and to be proactive in terms of how we manage it. But again, I hope we, as an industry, we are focused on making sure that, the things that we don't know, we acknowledge we don't know, and we have the curiosity to get in there and start seeing whether or not we should be taking some kind of, mitigation strategies on it. So that is a concern.
Let me just, we are getting close to finishing, and we will invite a couple of questions, so I want to just allow a minute or two for that too. But the changed world, the changed environments post-pandemic, and this was touched on earlier, I think also by Chip, that, it's almost a contradiction, isn't it, that just as you guys are all experiencing all the issues that you are to keep this community service going, Americans are moving more and more out to those smaller communities, and a lot of them are going to expect to have some sort of air connectivity. Is that in some ways, that's a plus in terms of the future of the industry? But it's also, again, one of these things that's very hard to meet that increased demand with the way the industry is struggling at the moment. So, Dion, what's your thoughts on that?
Well, follow the money. If the money's moving to rural communities and they find themselves lacking a very critical resource in terms of convenience and opportunity to fly, they need to make change. And you do that through your elected officials, and you determine what are they doing for you and your community. And so, again, I put long-term faith in change from that perspective, but it won't be fast.
But it's the voice. It's really what you're saying, isn't it? Which is
Absolutely.
through like RAA, etc. It's the voice as well, getting that.
And we have a voice. We have a chorus of
Yeah.
communities here, right?
Yeah.
And you'll hear more about that this week, doing just that.
Linda, would you?
I totally agree with Dion on that. And, we hear it loud and clear from the small communities we serve as well. And we've seen a lot of growth in a lot of the smaller cities and people moving out to rural areas. But yeah, I agree that a lot of
those people that are moving out there have wealth as
Right.
well. So they're prepared to pay for that air service, not to go on a bus, yes?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Rick, any last thoughts there on that?
No, I really agree with what I see this red thing blushing.
Flashing, yes, I know.
It's very ominous.
Do we? We are getting to the coffee break, so I know. But do we have? I'll take one big question if someone really would like to do that, I think
The big question.
the big question,
Pressure's
or,
on, audience, the big
or
question.
you can, of course, tackle these guys in the coffee break. So I'm not seeing any hands. I think they want coffee.
I know Sandy has a question.
Okay. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. I really appreciate it. And thank you to RAA and to Faye. Thank you.
Thank you.